Come in. Come in rejoicing. Come in with hearts breaking. Come in and once again be part of something larger than your solo, small self. Come in and open yourself to the song that we are all a part of. Come in and open yourself. Come in. As we prepare to sing our opening hymn, number 108, My Life Flows On, I invite you to greet the notes nearest you in human form. With a smile, a wave, a handshake, a hug, welcome them to this music today.
It was just a week ago, I was back in New York City, and I had the pleasure of hearing through a friend, Sweet Honey in the Rock, in the flesh, which was wonderful. This is a really big bunch of honey we have here coming up out of the rocks. It's actually a biblical phrase about nourishment found in difficult places. It comes out of the book of Psalms. So we are nourished today. I was nourished a lot when I was in New York City. It's a place where I have friends and family. It's a place where I can go see the Metropolitan Opera and stay up late and feel like I'm a grown-up again. But I did 3 things that I want to give you before I get started this morning. The first thing is I went down to Zuccotti Park, Liberty Plaza, the place where the Occupy Wall Street people are headquartered. And if you think y'all got drums, they do it for like 90 minutes a day, and it's impressive. And they have a village there and food tent, and they can give away coats, and you can get a Band-Aid, and all sorts of fine things happen. And I'm walking down one of the little pathways that they've created between all the tents, and I bunched shoulders and said, "I'm sorry," and found myself shaking hands with Cornel West. And off he went into another wonderful day, and I felt that I got a sense of the energy, the chaotic, sprawling, passionate, uncertain, but very clear devotion of these folks who want the world to be different than it is. And it was an experience and a powerful one. And then the next day I went to synagogue in a conservative shul where I attended when I lived there, and saw friends. There were only 25 or 30 of us, barely more than a minion. And yet it was good to see friends just drop in and have people say, "Oh, hi, I haven't seen you for a year or two." And then the next day I found myself up on the Upper West Side going to Riverside Church. You could talk about from the sublime to the ridiculous or vice versa. Instead of a synagogue with 25 people, I was sitting in a place that makes this room look small. Holds 2,500 people. Grandeur is what they do there, and they do it grandly. And there were maybe 700 or 800 people there, and didn't know until I arrived that it was Communion Sunday. And I don't object to communion. It's not a problem I have, but I don't want to take part in a meal to which I was not invited. You know what I mean? And yet when the time came, here they were delivering the elements to all of us. So they were very clear that it wasn't a test, it wasn't a moment of declaring how Christian you were, but an invitation to share. And I realized as I'm sitting there eating my little bit of whole wheat bread and drinking my little bit of grape juice that we do worship primarily with our heads, don't we? With our eyes and our ears. You're listening to me, you're listening to the music, you're enjoying the look. But we don't bring our bodies, the sense of taste, of touch, of smell in the room with us. And I think that's sometimes a loss, because that's how we live in the world. We live out in the world with all of our senses. And somehow we should think of ways in which we can be all here, not just all up here, if you know what I mean. And that's going to be part of my message today. But what I want to tell you most is that we want our worship services to be about our whole selves, not just our intellectual selves, not just our thoughtful selves. We want to bring our whole person to church, and so we have to find a way to do that. And that's why every week as I approach these words, I'm hoping I'll say something that will bring some of you all the way in, so that some of you can go all the way out. And that's why I cite these words that you hear every week. May these words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my redeemer, because I can't do it alone. A sermon is something we make. The words come out of my mouth, but the ones that matter have to land on your ear. I want to talk about my garden. I'm finally plucking up the last of it. I was out there yesterday because it was a warmish day, and I was tearing off the old hosta leaves and sweeping up the leaves and things, but I can't quite bring myself to pull up my green pepper plant yet. It's dead. There's no question about it. It's way dead, in fact, but it produced peppers, and for the last 2 years, all I got were leaves. Why did it make peppers this year? I have no idea. And I had tomatoes, which grew so fast I couldn't pluck them fast enough, so they fell on the driveway and got squishy. And I got some, though, and I did get a few pea pods. I'm going to have an asparagus crop next year. That'll be fun. But I want to tell you, I'm a lazy gardener. I forgot to water as often as anything, and I didn't pluck up the weeds. Sometimes I had to burrow through the weeds to find the lettuce. And I do this, I'm telling you this because I don't want you to know I like being a lazy gardener, but that's what I am. But what I enjoyed about my garden was how much I didn't have to do. Even when I didn't water it, the plants still grew. Even when I didn't weed, the plants still grew. Even when I put them in the ground and neglected them, when I went away, I came back and they were still making green peppers and tomatoes. And the part that I love about this is that it reminds me that I'm not the only gardener at work. The plants are doing almost all the work themselves. I'm just a bystander. I'm just watching it happen. I cheer from time to time and clear a little path, but for the most part, they're doing all their growing without thinking about me even a little bit. And I love that. I like the sense that somehow I'm not in charge of the universe. And I want you to think about that because the passage I want to give you today comes out of the Quran. It's an interesting passage. If you know, we put up on the website every week 3 passages from the Abrahamic scriptures for you to think about. And this week, the one that I chose came from what is the 33rd chapter or surah. And this is an interesting passage in which people are given advice as to how to relate to the Prophet Muhammad because the book was being written while he was alive. It says, "Do not enter the house of the Prophet except when you are permitted for a meal, without awaiting its readiness. But when you are invited, then enter, and when you have eaten, disperse without seeking to remain in conversation." Indeed, that would be troubling for the prophet, for he is too shy to dismiss you. It concludes, but Allah is not shy. I was intrigued by this, the idea of a shy prophet, of a leader who is immensely powerful and yet kind of uncomfortable talking with people, self-effacing. And it occurred to me that this was true of a lot of fabled prophets. Those of you who are Christian might remember there's a moment in Jesus' life in the Garden of Gethsemane when he realizes things are going to go bad for him really fast. And he says, "If this cup could pass from my lips, I would prefer it that way, God." That's literally what he's saying. Can you please take this away from me? But no. He feels doubt. If not doubt about what he is, but doubt about his ability to go through the trials ahead. And Moses is in over his head trying to run Israel, and he needs his father-in-law, Ruel or Jethro, to say, "Moses, Moses, you're working too hard." Literally. Appoint some people to do the small work, you do the big stuff. Moses had doubts. Jesus had doubts. Muhammad struggled with shyness. And I want you to know about this because we live in a culture, a political culture in particular, when we are seduced by the image of confidence and boldness. Have you been watching, God save you all, the Republican debates? This is not a comment on their policies. Please understand that. It is a show. It is an absolute show, and we know it. They're being put through hoops like various circus animals, and I think it's as reprehensible for the media to do it as it is for them to go through it. But my point is, what we keep hearing from all of them is, "I have a bold plan. I have my convictions. What we lack in Washington is leadership, and I'm going to be a leader because I am bold and I am confident." And people want to hear that. Unless, of course, you're Ross Douthat, who was a conservative columnist in the New York Times, who wrote recently, and I love this. He writes, "We've created what seems like the most capable, hardworking, high IQ elite in all of history, and for the last 10 years, we've watched them lead us off a cliff.